Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, your host, guide, and coach on this journey. Today's guest is someone whose work has touched millions of lives, whether they realize it or not. Peter Cuneo is the turnaround leader who helped guide Marvel Entertainment from bankruptcy to one of the most valuable entertainment brands in the world, culminating in its $4.5 billion acquisition by Disney. Along the way, he built a reputation as one of America's premier turnaround CEOs, transforming companies, restoring cultures, and leading organizations through moments that would have overwhelmed most leaders. What struck me most, though, was the person behind the business success. In a conversation we had prior to today's interview, I met a leader who combines courage with humility, conviction with curiosity, and decades of experience with a genuine desire to help others grow. Peter speaks about leadership, not as a title, but as a responsibility to serve, to develop people, and to create opportunities others may not yet see for themselves. I came away wishing I had met him years earlier. He would have been a great mentor. Maybe it's not too late. Let's bring him on, and you'll get a sense of why I say all of that. Peter Cuneo, welcome to One Sharp Sword. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dr. P. It's never too late to answer your question.
That's,
And
that's awesome. I look forward
at my
to it.
advanced age, I'm still meeting people and learning things from other people. I think you never stop learning. And if you're, inquisitive and interested in the world, theoretically, you go on just about forever.
That's so great. Yeah, my dad was 99 and was a big fan of curiosity and
Mhm.
continuing to learn and started a preschool when he was 94 because he was so uh, so driven by the idea that people learn how to learn. And it's great. It's
Yeah,
great.
well, good for him. I think I may put him on my
Uh,
heroes list already, just hearing that description. I hope I make it to 99 and so on, but all
well,
good.
yeah, you've got a good track record, so this is great. So let's talk about your early history. You shared with me that your leadership lessons began for you as a child when you were around 8 years old. Um, what can you just share the earliest experiences that shaped the leader you eventually became?
Yeah, I think I think that when you're growing up, when you're very young, I'm saying age 5 on,
Hmm.
it's possible, depending on how you grow up, how you're raised, the experiences that you have as a very young person, can start you on a life of leadership. Um, I have a podcast, as you know, and I have two podcasts actually, but I interview proven outstanding leaders, and I always ask them about their childhood, just the way you're asking me now.
Perfect.
And the reason that I do that, Wayne, is because there are a lot of parallels that I've seen.
Yeah.
The kind of experiences they had personally, um, in school, if they're a little older, professionally. I define young as age 5 to age 30,
Okay.
and so on. And you don't know at a very young age that you don't even know the word leadership, what it really means. But
True.
I'll give you an example in my case that something that happened that I didn't really think about till decades and decades later as having been very important for my getting started on a life of leadership. My father, who was a lieutenant in the New York City Fire Department, we lived in Queens, New York, in a part of Queens called Flushing.
Yeah.
And his firehouse was in Manhattan, on the edge of what is called Chinatown, which is right next to another area called Little Italy, and so on. But my father, when was a veteran, a U.S. Navy officer of the South Pacific, and in actually I was 8 years old. He was called up because he was a reserve Navy officer for the Korean War. And we went from New York City over a 2 year journey, adventure in a way, for me, an adventure for him. I don't know. I don't think he would have described the Korean War as adventure, but um, we went from New York City to Pensacola, Florida,
Amazing.
where he was going to go on an aircraft carrier. So he was getting some additional training. We went from Pensacola, Florida to Bremerton, Washington. Bremerton is where there was, and I think may still be, a mothball fleet, a big Navy mothball fleet. Bremerton is across the bay from Seattle, and he was tasked with many other people of taking a carrier out of mothballs to go into the war.
Hmm.
Uh, we then went from there to San Diego. San Diego is maybe the biggest Navy base in the country, certainly on the West Coast, but maybe
Yes.
the biggest. And so my mother and I and my sister lived in San Diego when went off to war on the ship. Um, and after the war ended, he was moved to the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard to do some work again on putting steam catapults in on Navy carriers. Prior to that, they were all hydraulic. You basically just threw the planes off the deck, but with steam, you had much more power and you can get them up to speed much quicker.
Wow.
So he worked for that for a year also. So I did the fourth grade in San Diego, the fifth grade outside of Philadelphia. And so as a young person, I lived in four different, very uniquely different places in 2 years. I had to make friends in each place. I don't remember it being difficult. But I even could tell at age 8, 9, 10 that there were differences, regional differences in how people behaved and thought and talked in the United States. And if you study proven leaders, they are typically very flexible people.
Hmm. Right.
They're able to handle unexpected problems. Very,
Flexible and resilient, right? I
that's
mean,
right.
yeah.
And so I often call it getting thrown into an alien environment. By alien in this case, I always clarify. I'm talking about different, not necessarily bad,
Right.
but different,
Right.
and being able to handle that in your personal life, business, whatever situation is. You can change your environment yourself, but to an alien environment. You work in New York, take a job in London. Well, guess what? It's going to be very different for a while for you. Okay. But that's a decision you made. Sometimes, unfortunately, you're thrown into an alien environment when you didn't expect it. My first turnaround, I was thrown into. I had no idea that I had any skills whatsoever handling difficult situations. But as it happened a number of times in my life, someone saw something in me I didn't see in myself. In this case, it was my boss. And one day he said, Peter, we're having trouble with the international division. You're now going to run it.
What
You're now-
organization was that, if you don't mind?
There was a company called Clairol,
Oh,
which is women's hair care products.
yes.
And
Not a
I found
small, not a
myself
small thing.
running a
That's amazing.
business overseas. And that, in this case, just to clarify, this is what we call the appliance division. This was not hair coloring or shampoos or so on. It was hot rollers, curling irons,
Uh-huh.
foot spas, those kinds of things. So beauty appliances.
I remember some of those in my house.
Yeah,
My mom
yeah,
was a consumer,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know it at the time, but because of the kind of life I'd led, I had built up some good things, traits in terms of leadership, but I had no clue personally. That's happened to me quite a bit in my life. I start out with no clue and then discover some nice things. But
I
uh,
think, if we pause there for just a second, I think that that's something that is also a leadership trait, right? That we sometimes miss what we take for granted about ourselves. This is just the way I think, and other people see that and go, you know what? We need that thinking style. We need that there. So that's great. What I'm curious about is I'm wondering, you talked about building you're about to show me your book, which is awesome. Um, Good, because I wanted to ask you about that as well.
yeah.
What I'm curious about is when uh you develop traits as a child and you don't actually know what traits you've developed, but you see traits in others that you would like to develop. Even now, like somebody in their 20s, their 30s, their
Mm.
40s, all the way through 60s, 70s, like can you deliberately, because some of this comes innately to you because of your early experience, can you be taught the leadership traits, or is it, I look at people, I ask them about their early times, and that's what helps me discern whether they're going to be a good leader or not? What do you do with that?
Well, it's a good question. As I said, I didn't really know, even aspire to being a leader. I
Yeah.
didn't know that I would enjoy it, actually. Although since I do turnarounds, there's a certain amount of stress involved. That's
Just a little.
part of it.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think yes, of course you can be taught, and sometimes it being taught is very subtle. And here's what I mean. My one of the reasons that I'm the way I am, and I'm kind of an adventurer. And again, I didn't think of myself that way at all until maybe 20 years ago. Is because my grandparents, most of whom were immigrants, several of whom came to the United States, did not speak any English, but got out there and survived. And they were people who they couldn't sit at a desk. They were people to get out there and work.
Yeah.
My parents were the same way. My mother was an EMT for 30 years. 30 years. She was a dispatcher for the last 10 of those 30 years because she physically, you can only do that for so long,
Yes.
back of an ambulance. My father was, as I said, he was a fireman, a fire lieutenant in New York City. Before that, he was in the Navy and he did 2 tours in the Navy. So he was an adventure. My father was Boy Scout of the Year in Manhattan. And I want to say the year was 1932, something like that. Um,
Amazing.
and so he was a person that just had to get out there. He later in life had a lot of problems, mental problems with PTSD and other things, but he was never a person who could sit at a desk. And so when you grow up and your grandparents, your parents, they're the thing that you see, which you think is natural and good and fun, they were all risk takers. So I became a risk taker. I wasn't afraid to take certain risks. Um, and so on, that became part of my nature. That was the model that they set for me. The
Yeah.
other great thing is, which I didn't appreciate at the time, but really do now, is my parents raised me and my grandparents with absolutely no prejudices about other people because of their color, their religion, their ethnic background, their sexual orientation. My parents said basically, you're going to run into good people in the world and bad people, and you got to figure out who's who. That was it. So I was not ever burdened by these other, kinds of things getting in the way of my growing up. I was open to to meeting and working with or learning or having as friends anybody, as long as they were good people. And
Hmm.
so my life was very diverse growing up. And it was diverse geographically, as I've mentioned, going around the US as well. But that diversity helped me learn the instincts of being a leader. Because the instincts come from primarily face-to-face interactions with a diversity of other people in diverse situations, professionally, school, personally, whatever. That's
So
how you learn how to influence the way other people think.
you have to have a perspective that basically acknowledges I don't know it all, right? And be willing to say, okay, what might I be missing? And and then to actually seek. I mean, you were in such um, diverse, culturally rich areas where you grew up. The diversity was just part of who you were. I saw a very, very disturbing film, short interview from 1964 recently, and it was, what do you think the difference between the races is? And it was frightening,
Mm,
how adults had grown up and in
mm,
1964 were talking about things. And
mm.
if that's what they're exposed to, that's what they know. And so to recognize that we actually have a responsibility, I think,
Mhm.
to go beyond what we know and
Yes.
deliberately ask, right? That's how you grow. Um,
I just mention one thing in that regard, which,
yeah.
again, I will tell you, I've said this over and over again, and is I could not have been successful. The biggest reason I was successful, have been successful, is I really enjoyed working with teams that were highly diverse so that I would get all manner of different opinions, points of view, even emotions on a certain subject or issue, opportunity, problem, whatever. Okay. I was always getting different points of view. And what I discovered also in doing that is that people, if you as a leader are genuinely interested in what they think and hearing from them. One, it builds a lot of trust in an organization. And of course, in my case, because I was going in to turnarounds where everyone was scared, I'd walk through
Mm,
the door the first day. There, who is this guy? What is he like? What's going on? Are we going to lose our jobs? All of that. And
yeah,
so it was always on my top of mind to start to build trust.
that's
And
great.
it wasn't conscious. I like to listen to other people's ideas. I still do today. Okay. I'm always interested. I may not agree with them, but it doesn't matter. And what I found out,
That's huge, by the way. Like
the
that's
human,
I think that's what's missing in our in
you're
current culture.
you're so right, Wayne. And listen, I I found that people, as long as you're interested in what they have to say, and
Yes.
genuinely interested, whether a decision doesn't go their way or not doesn't matter because they feel wanted, needed, respected, and they
Huge,
start to trust you.
huge points.
Okay. And you trust them implicitly because you're asking for their opinion.
How do you
You're
help someone
listening.
feel wanted and needed and to build that trust, listen to? I think that's the core of all of it. And I think that's part of what's missing as well. This is
We're faced with a world, these, I have two podcasts and I have two themes.
yes.
One is that we have less good leadership in the world than maybe ever in human history. I mean, it's so awful and it's everywhere. I'm not talking just about the US. I'm talking about, you know, all over the world. There's chaos, there's conflict, there's hate. Okay. And it's it's unbelievable. And the second theme is young people are not learning leadership, and we
Mm,
need them to because heaven knows we're going to need them in the future.
yeah.
We're going through a time in life I never in my wildest dreams, Wayne, ever thought I'd see.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the world has definitely changed. There's I was reviewing old political um um public brief speeches from presidents from ages ago. And I mean decades, not
Yeah.
ages ago, but just decades. So over the past and um on both sides. And the whole sense of poking fun at themselves, the
Mm.
whole sense of we are going to get through this. You may not agree with me or my policies, but we are going to get through this. Um, and the sense of being willing to listen to both sides of an aisle, to bring people together. That's and we are seeing that internationally. It's not commentary on the US. We're seeing it internationally, and I think that is what's needed.
I may have mentioned to you when we first spoke that I'm on the board of the National Archives Foundation.
Mm,
I've been on for 15 years. I love history. The Archives Department of the government, we are a foundation that works with that department, but we are separate. Um, but our job is basically to raise money so that the archives can do programs to educate Americans on our history, programs that typically would not be funded by the government.
mhm.
So, but I believe very strongly that part of learning, a way to learn leadership is to study history and to see how people behave, great leaders and poor leaders behaved historically, because you'll see parallels. There's a phrase, the past is prologue. And it's
Right.
in terms of
That's right.
human nature, absolutely right. I mean, we can go back 1,000 years to leaders 1,000 years ago, and you will find the same emotions, good and bad. And so I think there's some wisdom to be gained from studying history. So I've always loved history, and the archives keeps all the records of the United States government. I think last count there was something like 22 billion documents. Okay,
Yeah.
and you know, I, I, what I'm doing right now, I do a number of different programs, but I'm doing a series right now of 28 1.5 minute bite-size um, presentations by me about great moments in American history. Of course, being on the Archives Foundation board, this is a big moment, the biggest moment since I've been on the board, because it's the 250th anniversary of the US. And so I'm doing 20 because my book has 28 chapters, 28
Yes.
things that would love to be able to teach to, budding or current leaders. And
So
so
let's
I
say
have
the title for
28.
those that are on
Yeah.
audio only. The book is called Superhero Leadership, and it talks about 28 ways of leading with uh, courage and strength and compassion. And that last one is often left out.
But my point, yeah. So my point is, I have these different moments in American history when leaders
Yes,
in the U.S. um, did showed great leadership and tie exactly to the 28 chapters, which are all based on 28 one-liners that I have in the
yeah,
book. And so the latest one, which everyone can find if they're interested, um, is about FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, taking over the presidency in the midst of a depression, in where everyone's scared, the country's in chaos, people are, you know, it's a terrible time. Reminds me of some of my turnarounds walking through the door. Um, but he gave one of the greatest speeches ever in our history. And this is the speech in which he says, the greatest thing we have to fear is fear
mm,
itself.
hmm,
He gets, just by saying that, starts the American people to start to trust. him. Sure, he had to put in, along with Congress, many changes, big, important changes to get us going again, and it didn't happen, obviously, in a year or two.
Yeah.
It took, the Depression lasted technically for at least 10 years. So um, it was, it's that kind of thing. And I'm enjoying putting that together. I have
I
George
can't
Washington,
wait.
George Washington crossing the Delaware, another example,
Yeah.
great moment. And I won't bore you with them, but you get the
No,
idea.
you, this is
Yeah.
this is where it gets great.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I can't wait to dive in and watch them. I haven't seen them. I didn't.
There's one new one every week.
Okay.
And this particular week is number three.
How do we
So,
find them?
got
These videos are called what?
so these videos, all you have to look up is superhero leadership with Peter Cuneo. But you can go to my website, petercuneo.com.
Okay,
You can hear or see both my two podcasts, as well as a lot of other things I have listed there, things I recommend for young people to learn leadership,
that's
and
great.
so on and so forth. There's a lot of interesting things, and that includes all of these minute and a half kind of bite-sized moments. They're
That's
there
so
too.
great. I'm very excited about this. This for many reasons. It's so good. Can I ask you about a couple of the one-liners? In I do a lot of work with organizations. I do a lot of work with leaders. I'm known for being what people have said life-changing, which is a huge honor to be told. And yet they're the ones doing the change work. I get to guide it, but they're the ones
Mhm.
that make the change.
You know you are bigger than the life you are leading. It really is time to attend to that thing you've wanted to do or have, but you've been putting off. It's time to step into that dream you've parked for someday. It's time to claim true well being, both personally and professionally, without giving up the success that got you here. It's time to check out Dr. Pernell's signature small group retreat, the Exponential Success Summit. Explore exponentialsuccesssummit.com. Seats are extremely limited as this is a very special small group event. www.exponentialsuccesssummit.com.
Along the way, I I help cultures shift. And one of the things that you say is always hire world-class people,
Mhm.
never settle. How does that work when you're listening openly and you're accepting and how do you sort, wow, I would hire this person on and oh, I will listen to this person, but they're not on my team. How does that how does that work with you? Do you understand? Like,
I
I don't
understand
know
what you're saying.
if
I
I'm
must say
clear.
that I think anyone I hire is automatically on my team. One of the things I like to tell people when they first meet me, when they're new hires or I'm just coming into a new situation,
Yeah.
and this may seem very subtle because it is, but I say to people, you have to prove to me that you can't do the job. I don't
Oh,
say to them,
I
you
love
have to
that.
prove to me you can do the job.
You
Now,
start with the
one
assumption.
is a pessimistic statement
Yeah,
and one is an optimistic statement. And they're actually quite different.
they're very different.
But I would always say to people, you have to prove to me you can't do the job. If you're here and I hired you, of course, expecting you to be successful.
That's so
Um,
great.
So,
So,
so
what's
if
your
you're on the
what?
team automatically, till you prove you shouldn't be on the
Oh,
team. And
love.
unfortunately, sometimes that happens. It's no one bats 1,000, but
What's
that's
your
my philosophy.
I love that. So how do you categorize somebody as always hire world-class people? How do you categorize somebody as world-class? Because I mean,
Yeah.
again, that is how you build a world-class organization, is you get people who think at a
Well,
certain
honestly, for
level.
me, it starts, and let me say, first of all, of the, I'll be honest, of the 28 essentials in the book, which are these one-liners we've been talking about, this one is probably the hardest because to always find the right person in the time you need that's world class in every situation isn't, I'm going to be honest, impossible. Okay. This is meant to get people to try their best.
Great.
Eventually, you may have to settle to get someone who's not world class, but certainly can do the job and will be fine. Okay.
Of
I'm really
course, I would
looking,
land on the hardest for you.
yeah, yeah.
That,
I mean, so I'm usually looking for people that have a broad view
yes,
and depending on the business, a world view potentially. Okay.
yes.
That have had, I'm looking for people that have had difficult experiences. Um, I don't ask some people when they interview, others will say, "Tell me about your biggest failure." I never do
Mm.
that. I don't feel that's appropriate. But I am looking for people who I feel, and sometimes a little hard to get at this exactly, have wor worldwide view, have had a few missteps, but learned from them, but took them seriously and learned from them. Because I believe you have to you have to fail to succeed.
Without seeking failure. I've heard,
Right. Of course.
I've,
No one, yeah, unless you're nuts, right? No
uh,
one wants to fail.
right. I've heard it's like you have to, go out and fail fast. It's
No,
like,
no, 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 no. No.
right. It's like,
Fail fast. I can't even imagine that concept.
right. But
No.
that was big in the 80s. That was like,
Really?
go
Yeah.
fail fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Wayne, I missed that one. I have to be honest.
Why are we telling people that? Yeah, so I love this. One of the reasons that I really appreciate you and your philosophy is that it does come from this positive place and this positively promotional place of other people, that you see the best in them, you expect the best from them, and that almost commands versus demands. It almost commands the um the drive for others to step up into what you see in them, right? I just love that. I love that. I Here's a question from one of your 28. It's number 27, and it's about having the courage to act when change is mandatory for both survival and success. And those are two different action states. Survival requires like quick assessment, I would think, and
Mhm.
success requires some um, a longer vision. Can you talk a little about that?
Sure. So I think it's pretty easy to recognize poor leaders because one of the biggest attributes they have, negative attributes, is that they really don't want to face decisions they know they need to make. They don't want to face them head on. Their mentality is maybe the problem will go away. Maybe
Mhm.
I can work subtly with this individual that's not working out and turn them around, which is
We're-
really a mental excuse for they're not going to work out. I just can't talk
We
to them.
used to joke. I worked with a team, and we used to joke that some leaders are like, well, maybe if I go on vacation and come back, this person will have died. And it's like, no, that's not how you
Oh,
handle
no, no,
cultural issues or change management.
no. Now, look, it takes courage to
Yes.
make a difficult decision. But this is what, I often say in my definition, I ask often in a speech, we'll ask the audience to take a minute and just think about their definition of leadership. I'm not going to ask anyone to stand up and tell everyone, no, but just think about what's their definition of leadership. And I share mine, and the two key words are courage and change. And it comes down to the courage to make change.
Mm.
Most human beings do not aspire, do not want to be a leader. I've had experiences where I'm offering great promotions to people and they don't want them because they're going to have more people or new people reporting to them.
Mm.
And in leadership, there are going to be times when you're going to have to make others unhappy and you can't avoid it. And a lot of human beings want to be liked, loved by everybody. And that's human nature. That's to be normal. That's normal. And
Yeah.
and that's fine. But they knowing that they're going to have to make other people unhappy, they don't want responsibility that will require them to do that. So, I was I often go to MBA programs and talk about leadership and do sometimes do a little role playing.
Hmm.
And very often the students are think that being a turnaround person is very sexy. It's an adventure. If you're good, you can make some really good money and so on. And I do role playing though in this. And then when I'm done, you can tell by their body language that the class is rethinking whether they want to do turnarounds.
It's all glamour until you get
Yeah,
messed up.
I will say to pick anyone in the audience, but random.
Mhm.
Let's say it's John Doe or
Mhm.
Jane Doe, and I say, congratulations. So happy to have you here. Your title is, of course, Senior Vice President. You're going to be in charge of manufacturing. And there's your corner office. Here are the keys to your company car, and blah 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 blah, and all these other things. Okay, and it's great to have you here. And they're all smiling and happy. And then I say, oh, I have to mention one thing though. Next week we're closing our factory in Omaha, Nebraska, and you're going to have to go out there and do that. You're in charge of manufacturing. It's a unionized facility and it provides 50% of the jobs in that particular town. And the union has figured out that we're probably going to have to close. And, they're very unhappy, as are all the residents of the town. But you're going to have to go out there and do it. And you can see the students suddenly thinking, wait a minute, maybe this isn't for me. I can actually see the body language.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
I would bet that they stopped breathing for a second, just like,
well,
oh,
I've made that situation up. I have moved manufacturing in several turnarounds from the
yeah.
United States to Asia.
Hmm.
I've never, and in that sense, there were closures or partial closures of different facilities. But
It's the toughest thing to
that's
announce to
just
an
one
organization.
example of making just very, difficult decisions, and it's hard, and it takes
It is hard.
courage. Um, I I'd often tell a story, usually on my turnarounds. The CEO or president, whatever the title was that I'm going into, is long gone. So I'm walking into an empty office, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was one exception that's very interesting. And he was still in the office. He reminded me of Mr. Rogers.
Oh,
Um, he
okay.
he had been with the company 30 years. He had been the CEO president for probably 10 years. He knew everybody, okay, and so on. And he was a very gentle soul. At least that's the feeling I had. So before he left, there was an overlap of a couple of days between my arrival and him leaving. And we had a conversation, and he said to me, Peter, I have to tell you, I'm actually happy you're here. And I thought to myself, you can't be happy that I'm here. But I said, okay, why is that? He said, well, you'll do the things that I just couldn't do. I said, really? What do you mean? And he said to me,
Wow.
Peter, I couldn't fire my friends.
Wow.
Yeah. So, an example of kind of what I'm talking about, courage, you know,
Yes.
uh, uh, um, change.
Yes.
So I will say that very nice man who was honest with himself, but he just couldn't do it. After 30 years, everyone was a friend. He cared about everyone. He knew their families. He knew their kids in college. He knew, etc. And he just couldn't pull the trigger. And he to the point where he'd write it down rather than basically
Yeah,
make his friends unhappy.
I've seen that happen.
It was left
And
left for me to make his friends unhappy.
right,
But
bring in
you know,
bring in the axe or the hammer. Yeah.
sometimes, not
Uh,
always, but sometimes. Yep.
can you weigh that, what you just said, like having to be the one with courage to maybe be the one to not only deliver the news, but architect the change, and weigh that against the leadership principle of generating positive energy from minute one?
Well, so I think I understand your question. I always say you need to be positive. You need to be optimistic, even in
Yeah.
times where there's bad news. I got a lot of examples of having to give speeches shortly after I've got some bad news out of the
Yeah.
blue, and I
Mm,
have to be an actor. And I don't mean that you had to talk like everything's wonderful or blah, 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 blah. No, but I could not carry, you know, in my demeanor giving a speech to 200 employees what I just heard. Okay.
hmm
You have to be an actor. That is a requirement sometimes. But I'm fundamentally an optimistic person. And so, um, you know, so let's take the example I was talking about moving manufacturing to
Right.
Asia. Okay. So obviously everyone hates that. Okay. You're, maybe people in manufacturing, half of them unfortunately are going to lose their jobs. All right. And it is what it is. And yes, you know, people might be mad at me for a while, but I try to explain that if we don't move, we will be out of business and everyone will lose their job. You see, so for me, it's an easy decision to make because I'm not thinking about the unfortunate people that will lose their jobs. I'm thinking about the ones we'll save, which is far more.
Mm,
Okay. And when I explain that the competition is already making similar product to ours in China, okay, for example, or any of the Asian countries, and the cost for the same quality of product is 25% of our costs,
mm,
US. We will not, no one will be buying our product shortly, so we will be out of business. So we have to move, and we have to move now. So look, no one likes to hear that, but when they hear the realities, you know, then
yeah.
and it builds trust again because you're being honest. I'll tell them flat out, here's the numbers.
Yeah.
And we should have been there already. We're late. We need to go. So
Um, Interesting. This is really good. What I have I'm watching our clock and I have so many
sure.
questions. I have so many questions. Um, eh, the leaders of today, do they need different skills than leaders of 30 years ago?
I don't think it's different skills, but there's no question that the vibe, the tone of those skills has changed. And I will say, honestly, it's so much harder to be an effective leader today than it was in past generations. It just obviously, the world is much more competitive. Technology has moved forward. Technology can make you or break you almost overnight. There is constant change that you have to deal with
Mm,
as a leader almost every day. When I first came out of business school and started in big corporate life, I was before I got into turnarounds, I was a classic big corporate finance guy. And every year we would make a long range plan, a 5-year plan, and we never had to change it in that year.
Mm,
Today, if you can even do a long range plan,
yes.
you need to modify it monthly,
Yes.
weekly. It's unbelievable because of the pace of change and challenge.
I think
And
this is
it's made a
huge.
major, major difference.
I want to underscore that because that is true. You know, when I work with individuals and organizations, and I know you've done the same, it's it's so important to call out that even if you have a plan for yourself, like this is who I want to become in
Mhm.
5 years, that 5 years, it's better to do a 3 year plan or a 2 year plan and recognize you're going to be changing it quarterly because the environment around you is changing, which means both the resources you have as well as the resources you'll need, your own growth and development are going to be
Mhm.
changing really fast.
Much harder for young people uh, to get on in the world with their careers than it was going back. It's much harder.
Yeah,
And yeah, but the fundamentals, my book, these 20 essentials, or you can call them fundamentals. These one-liners,
love
and
it.
I have a chapter on each one-liner. And there's I wrote this book because I believe this will still be read 20 years from now because these essentials, okay,
They are
are
essentials.
are are fundamental.
Yeah.
They really are fundamental. You
Well,
know,
I mean, you have one that says maintain your energy, right? Mental and physical.
yes,
And I think that is so different. That's what distinguishes a leader in so many ways from, oh, it's another day. I'll get up, I'll look at my calendar, I'll see what I'm supposed to do today, versus being in charge of your life, maintaining your energy, bouncing out of bed because you love it, and choosing to lift. Like I have a saying, lift as you lead, right? So it's like choose to lift the people around you as you go because your energy's there. You choose that energy. So I just love that. The inner self section is main
yeah,
one of it's number 24.
yeah.
Uh maintain your
I
energy.
think see, well, honestly, I think people can feel it. It's part of this
Definitely.
body language.
Yes.
I really feel very strongly that communications is a lost art
Oof,
in our
yes.
world now, and body language is 50% of communication. That's why I like to go face to face with people. I can't really honestly see much of their body language on a Zoom call,
Right.
particularly people I don't know. If I know them, it's not a problem. But
Yes.
people, and I meet a lot of people for the first time in my life, the way I do things now, and so on. But this, but body language really means a lot. But I think people can read your body language, and if you're tired and you're down, you know, that has an effect. If you're a leader, people just naturally think what something's wrong. Our leader's
Right.
down. This is not good for us. Okay. And sometimes it's not even conscious on their part. They
Yeah.
just feel it.
Yes.
And then it spreads to other people. So you owe it to the people you work with to get enough rest, to get your head clear, figure out your life, how you lead it, so that you have those moments to completely detach. And I've had these hobbies, you know, detaching can take many, many different forms.
Yes.
For me, hobbies was a big one. You could work out, do things physical. I mean, there's a million things we can all talk about where you could just escape, watch a stupid TV show for 3 hours, just a completely inane show for 3 hours, but that's fine. That's all you're doing. You're not thinking about anything else. There's so many things. Um, but whatever form that detach takes,
Yeah.
maybe you ride a bike at home, or whatever form it takes. You need that. You owe it to yourself and to others, and you must get a good night's sleep. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I did 2 tours. As you know, I was on a guided missile destroyer off of North Vietnam,
Mm.
And we would typically, what we call, go on the gun line into combat for 30 days at a time. And then you would normally get 3 or 4 days in some port in Asia. We call it rest and relaxation. And very often,
Far
many
north.
of us, when we first get in the port, we would sleep. I once slept for 24 hours. I was so tired because of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And on a ship, you have two jobs. You have a job of your functional job. I was communications officer in one, was damage control officer in another. But in addition to that functional job, you have a ship driving. You learn to drive this big ship. If you're what's called a surface warfare officer, which is what I was, over time, you qualify. No one jumps on these ships and drives these ships like, immediately. Of course not.
Yeah.
There's a lot to learn and to
Amazing.
practice and to
Yeah.
practice. Not in the war, but when you're not in the war, you can practice. And so I think that I got would get very tired. You couldn't avoid it. And I'd learned to, I very often 4 hours of sleep, that was it a night. You just had no choice, you know? And I learned how, with that experience, how important a good night's sleep was when I couldn't get one, which most
Yeah.
of the time in the combat zone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
You're struggling to
but
keep in.
I learned how, I think that many people really don't appreciate how important it is to really get that that deep sleep they talk about.
Yeah. No, that's a pet of mine as well. That's great. So we have a few minutes left, and I would love to weave together a couple of questions I have for you and give you the opportunity to talk about again your book and how people can reach you. I'm a big fan of the existential dilemma, right? And fixing that, helping people get through that. Who am I? Why am I here? So I
Mhm.
wanted to ask you about identity, right?
Mhm.
Because you've changed your identity in various ways, and yet you've maintained this grounded sense of self. And then, so if you could talk about that and maybe weave that into if you had one leadership lesson that you could give to people today, what would that be? And then we'll talk about again your book, how people can talk and find you, petercuneo.com, and such.
Well, I again, I just think that the lesson goes back to what I talked about before. Get as much face-to-face experience as you can get with a diversity of people in a diversity of personal situations, professional situations. If you're in school, fine. Travel also. See
Travel's
see
amazing,
see
right?
different environments. Okay. Understand that we don't have everything right in the US. There are good ideas in other countries as well.
Yeah.
You know, deal with people and how they think. The fact that we all have the same emotions, but we dress up our emotions differently depending on the culture in our country versus another country. But we are basically get behind that. We're all feeling the same emotions, good or bad. Okay. And I think that's again how it's very hard. Look, why isn't it happening? One is this,
Oh yeah.
that you can't learn a thing by spending hours on your cell phone, particularly if you're a teenager. This is
Yeah.
killing you. No, I'm serious. I'm not saying you shouldn't ever be on, no, but the stuff that's on here, if you don't understand what's real and not real, which is unfortunate because many young people don't. They believe anything they read or hear or people tell them. Okay. You've got to have those face to face experiences. People will say things to you on a cell phone that they'd never dare say to your face. Okay,
It's like road
it's
rage, right?
yeah,
You're
sure,
not because you're not in that proximity, in
yeah,
that sphere,
yeah,
right? You'd never say that to somebody
right,
if your mom was standing next to
yeah,
you, or
yeah,
if you had to say it face to face, looking at someone in the eyes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. there's so many, but technology is a problem. Zoom calls are nice. Again, you're not, they
They're
don't quite
convenient.
replace a face-to-face, as
Yes.
I've mentioned before. Okay. So that's one thing. Second is we have overparenting in our country.
Oof.
Parents are making all the choices for young people. Let your kids fail. I know what I'm saying. Let your
Yes.
kids fail. They're not going to be, screwed up for life over something. No, the decisions they're making are little tiny things. Okay. And
Yeah.
some will be right. And guess what? Some will be wrong. That's okay. If you raise your kids to never have a negative thought about themselves, when they really get out in the real world, they will disintegrate. And I have seen this happen with
I've seen it happen as well.
Ivy League graduates cannot handle the simplest, tiniest setback, things that you and I would laugh at. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm with
Apparently there is a certain percentage. I think it's as high as 17%
yeah.
of job applicants bring their parents to the interview.
Yes, it's crazy. So there's so many, I could list other things. Our culture is a celebrity, non-celebrity culture.
Mm.
If
Yeah.
kids are raised to be interested in what some celebrity had for breakfast, some non-celebrity, some influencer,
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
that's not the kid's fault. That's our culture.
Yeah.
There's these nothing wrong with these kids. They're good people. They're fundamentally good people. They're shaped wrong, and it's a shame. I've got to run, man. I'm sorry.
Okay, this
I'm,
was
I'm
amazing. 28 Essentials for Superhero Leadership. Superhero Leadership is the name of the book. Peter Cuneo, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.
all
Really
right.
appreciate it.
All right.
And yeah, I'll reach out. You and I will continue this conversation.
Right. Right, Wayne.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Dr. P, very much.
All righty. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. As he exits, this is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Pernell, your host, your guide, your coach on this journey. Please, please look up petercuneo.com, petercuneo.com. His work is amazing. We didn't even touch on the barest little piece of it. So amazing stuff, amazing human. And I hope you got a lot out of that. As you have been listening to this, watching this, please like, please share, please engage, interact with me, interact with Peter or any of my guests. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again here next time. Thanks so much. Again, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Purnell, and this is One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. We'll see you next time.